I would like to call our meeting to order. I stated, let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which we always do. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the
Flag.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, can we have roll call, Kate?
Of course. Joseph Britton, absent. Rachel Chalesky,
Here.
Kate Canetta, here. Gladys Cooper,
Here.
Lauren Daly, absent.
Absent, yes.
Joe De Silva.
He will follow, try to get on later.
Okay.
Oh, he was on.
He was on.
mute.
So.
I'm here. I was just
Okay.
mute.
Thank you, Joe.
Catherine Hodgson,
Here.
Rich Janelli,
Here.
Kathy Molinaro,
Here.
Al Russo.
Oh, we're waiting for Al.
We're
Al
waiting
is
for him. Okay. And Amy Spallino.
here. Okay, good.
2 absent, 8 present, 1 joining.
Okay, thank you. Before we start, on last week, we had a presentation about school reentry, and we went at a long distance, and we just felt like last week we were not going to entertain a question and answer, and more or less having a discussion with Dr. Sal as chairperson. I felt that, you know, once we had listened to all the comments and discussion last week as a board, then the next question would be, how could we as the board support Dr. Sal and his team bringing forth the hybrid model? And I had that discussion with him last week, and we decided that since we didn't have the opportunity to get into the question and answer last week, that we would do it this week. So that's why we decided to have another information session to keep everybody informed and to really let everyone know that our main concern is to get everyone back that would like to come back, that everyone is safe and everyone is secure. So that was one of the reasons that we did not have an open dialogue on last week. And I really appreciate everyone patient last week as we tried to get through and understand the comments that people were making. So thank you, Dr. Mead, and everyone that really helped with the assisting us on last week. So the next thing on the agenda will be, we have an action item that we need to take care of. I need a motion on the action item. Kate?
Kate's frozen.
Oh, she froze?
Sorry,
Oh,
I'm
she's
muted there.
Muted, I mean.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a motion on the action item, Kate, the revised calendar. You have it? Does any other board member have it?
I have it.
Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
That the Board of Education approve the revised calendar for 2020-2021.
Second.
Motion made by Kathy,
Second.
seconded by Joe. Any discussion at this time? Dr. Sal, you want to have anything to say?
Other than last week or week and a half ago, the state board permitted district to enact a waiver, and it allows us for at the beginning year, if you use the days for PD days, up to 3 days, you're permitted to do it. And that's what we would like to do for training purposes. We have a lot to do, as you can see from that list. And then the youngsters would start on September 1st. It doesn't really impact any vacations or anything because we're not changing anything else. Just the start of the school year, and the teachers will be coming in rather than students in the beginning, so we can do opening training.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sal.
Gladys
I have
Amy
a
has her hand
question.
up.
I just have a question. So I was looking at the calendar today, so that means that those are the PD days for the year then, right? There's not going to be any other PD days. Like when do the teachers, gather again together?
Well, I think I got to look at it in front of me. I think we have the day, election day is one, and
Oh,
we
okay.
move the other ones. And then they go, if with the hybrid model, they have every Wednesday.
Oh, true. You're right. Okay.
You know what I mean? So I think they
Yeah.
have time.
Okay.
Gladys, I have a question.
Yes.
Dr. Sal, like you just mentioned, Election Day is a PD day, and I think there was one the day before Memorial Day. We already moved those to the beginning of the year. We approved that as the last calendar. So
Yeah,
isn't that one of the 5 PD days in advance of September 1st then?
I got to look at November. We took 2 from the year and moved them up front. And then I'm looking now, it just says election day, school closed. It doesn't say PD. So
Right. I think
that
those
is
were the
right.
2 days we
Right.
moved up.
That was
Okay.
one of them.
Yeah, so the large
Just making
days
sure.
are taken. Yeah.
Any
Thanks,
other
Kara.
questions?
Well, I just want to point out that also that there's a permanent 90-minute early release for high school and middle school.
Yes.
And also an hour release for elementary for the entire year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Gladys,
Yes. Yes,
I-
ma'am.
I'm just going to hop off for about 20 minutes. We have a meeting about fixing the intersection on Clapper Ridge in front of the high school. So I've been bending the state's ear, and I've got them to come up with about $5 million to get working on that. So I'm going to hop on with that with the state, and then I'll be back on with you guys. Just so you know.
Thank you, Mayor Bowden.
Okay.
So I'm not understanding. Yeah. Yes.
At the bottom of that,
So on the schedule,
on the schedule,
on the calendar, what we're asking for in the ending, it does impact, for example, the conferences. We're going to have to do them virtually. When we talked about the hybrid, in order for us to operationalize the hybrid, we're going to need time each day for the staff to interact with youngsters at home and to plan. And also, I personally think the day is exceptionally long to have the youngsters there all day with masks. So we were able to end the high school 90 minutes. The elementary, we did an hour because it was too long for those youngsters to go with a grab and go. So they're going to have their food during the day, and they'll have their mask breaks during the day. That's why their day is a little bit longer, but they'll have breaks. So they're all equivalent to the what would amount to just under 900 hours. It's really the board's opportunity to ask questions. We did get the frequently answered questions. You did get it today, I think. We tried to answer those. We're going to be post them into the frequently answered questions for parents as well.
okay,
But we just thought tonight's your night.
okay. So board members, tonight is your night. You can start with your questions and get your answers that you did not receive last week.
Okay, I want to start.
Okay, Amy.
Well, my first question in looking over the frequently asked questions and looking over a lot of stuff. So with the new hybrid schedule, that's what we're going to be doing, right?
Yes.
And the new calendar. So what are we doing about working parents? I don't know if that's the right way to word that, but I mean, that is going to affect people because of the early dismissals and so forth. So I don't know what are we doing? Is there child care like it usually is, or how is that going to work?
Is Ann on?
I believe Ann is here.
Ann,
I'm
you want
here.
to take that and let her know?
Yes.
Tell Ann, that's a big concern of ours too, Amy. So Ann's been working feverishly on helping, trying to come up with some solutions. Go ahead, Ann.
Yes, so ELP will function as it normally does, the extended learning program. We will have a before program and an after-school program tailored to the hours that students go to school. I'm also working with an outside agency to see about the possibility of them using a local site here in Danbury to offer full-day care Monday through Friday, probably 7:30 to 5:30. That is still in negotiations within that agency. Hopefully within the next week or 2 weeks, we'll have more word on that. We are keeping track of families that are calling ELP and asking for full-time care. We're up to, I think, probably about 30 or 40 parents and families right now that are looking for full-time. That's the update on that.
Thank you, Anne. So how does that compare to, I mean, how many people usually are using the ELP? And you said 30 or 40 parents have inquired. I mean, you know, how many?
The 30 to 40 is who we have on a waiting list right now for full-time care. We've had close to probably 60 registrations for ELP already in our regular schools, and in our 21st century schools more than that. I don't have that figure tonight. Those numbers have all been rolling in daily as parents are doing it online. We're trying to cut down the amount of folks that are coming to Osborne and the Faith Center to drop off registration. We're encouraging online payments. But normally the ELP program has close to 1,600 children in it.
Okay.
Dr. Sal, I think it's also important to note how the principals are looking to schedule their buildings in the AP by street address and by neighborhood, which I think is also going to be helpful in this effort. You know, we're being mindful of working families and feel strongly that if we can schedule our buildings by street address, that families will be able to go together. And so, you know, kids in that plan will not be split up. And so that will offer a little bit more opportunity for working families to get to work.
Courtney, would you want to explain that? And I think it's a good point, what we're trying to do so families stick together.
Sure, yeah. So, and it also helps with the buses and cohorting. So if it's a possibility and if it'll work. So if you take your district and just divide it straight in half the kids live on this side and half kids live on this side, you're going to be scheduling them to hang together with the address, you know, so that they're, so it takes into consideration if kids living families have children with multiple last names, they'll still be cohorted, you know, with their family. And also people within an apartment building will still remain relatively cohorted together. And then, you know, we'd have to make some adjustments depending on where people at the end of the day register. So if they're registering in one area for more remote than the other, then we'll have to make some adjustments to make it be half in on the Monday, Tuesday, and half in on the Thursday, Friday to make it more equal. And we're calling it the blue group and the orange group rather than AB. So the blue group would be ideally from a group of neighborhoods that are grouped together, and the group B would be in a group of neighborhoods that are together, the orange group and the blue group. Okay. And again, that keeps sibling groups together and also helps the cohort like with neighborhoods. And helps move the buses more quickly too.
Mayor Mark, we were talking about in the hybrid model, there'd be parents who would be in need of daycare. So Ann talked about pursuing some activities with some private groups. Is the city thinking about anything on, you know, regarding opening up anything, helping out with any of that? Do you know anything that's going on in the community?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it might be a great opportunity for some of the nonprofits out there to be able to grow their programming. So that might be like the Y and organizations like that. We should reach out to them. I can do that for you and see if they'd be willing to put together some programming. You know, the Dome, I know Ann got a price from the Dome, and I think all of us collectively fell out of our chair.
Yeah, and it was, the board didn't know that, but we tried to rent the Dome, get the Dome, but it was just over the top.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, I think there's opportunity there. If I'm a entrepreneurial nonprofit, I could run sort of like a day camp kind of thing, and they probably access some of that education money that's coming down through. Yeah, it might be a good conversation with Jim Maloney we should have too. He's wonderful at pulling down those dollars. I'll reach out to him and talk to him, even if it's for one cohort of students. You know, certain poverty lines, whatever the case might be. He might be able to tap in.
I know Pathway was interested in helping as well.
Yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. That'll be my task.
Thank you.
Dr. Sam.
Yes.
What, since we're getting involved with nonprofits, have you had any conversation with New Hope, because they do have a daycare center?
About 4 weeks ago, I talked to
Reverend Parker?
Reverend Parker, and I told him, he said, well, how can we help? I said, really, whatever happens this year, we didn't know what was going on, if we could set up sites throughout the community that parents can frequent at for daycare at reasonable rates, that would be something. So he was going to talk to the minister, so I can follow up with that.
Yeah, because I know Eden Drive too, down at Eden Drive, and the church on Rowan Street.
I'll follow up with Pastor Parker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Sal,
Yes.
with regard to the ELP, I'm a little unclear. Are you anticipating to have those programs maintained at the individual schools themselves, or are you looking for off-site facilities where somehow the kids would have to be then shuttled to that off-site facility?
Ann, you could answer, but we're looking at on-site. Go ahead, Ann.
Yes, we are looking at on-site and to try to continue that cohorting students as much as possible in their own school buildings. The less commingling of students, the better we're going to be.
Okay, so it'll be within the same school that they go. Is there any particular hours that vary from what they are currently, or you haven't?
We will, what we're looking at right now is starting when school ends. So when the final schedule is formalized, then that's when we'll begin working more with HR to start bringing staff in at those times, just like we do like on a half day or early dismissal day.
And will it extend to what, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or?
6 o'clock for working parents.
Yeah, one other thought, you had mentioned that you had, I think, some 60 or some odd applicants there. Now that it's officially announced we're going to go to the hybrid, would you anticipate possibly more people signing up? Or
Yes.
just, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't said anything to any of the parents that have called until it was formally announced tonight. But
Gotcha.
I think now that parents will know a little bit more about what's going to be happening with the school schedule, they're going to start looking for what their options are.
Okay, and just to confirm that all the safety precautions will be adhered to, obviously, in the ELP, learning centers or areas, correct?
Absolutely. We're doing that in my other programs right now as well, too.
Okay, it's just more for the record. Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for board members?
I have some questions.
Yes, go ahead, Rachel.
I saw a document with some questions on it. Were those just your questions, Kate? Or was it a compilation of board members' questions? I don't know if I missed something or not.
Yeah, the documents that was pulled off today, that was sent to us today.
Yes.
I think those were the some of the information that was from last week when we had the meeting. I'm not sure.
These, I think, were Kate's questions.
Some of these were mine. There's a
Yeah.
couple on there that were not.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another document that we're finishing that was from the Rachel, from the last parent meeting that we had that's different than this. They're going to merge the two.
Okay. And you'll send that to us as well?
Yeah, we're just finalizing that. A lot were, by the way, on why the hybrid would look like, all of that. But we're going to merge the two, and then there'll be one running document so parents can kind of get to it, and we can kind of answer the questions for everybody.
Okay. And so now that we're going with the hybrid, will 100% distance learning still be an option for parents, a choice?
The three options are as follows. You can go to homeschooling, where you have to unenroll from the district. You can do a full-time DL, which is one, or you can return to school. In our case, return to school is the hybrid model.
The hybrid for
Yes.
all levels, K through 12?
Yes.
And how flexible are those
Choices?
Yeah.
The way the state gave us clarification, if a parent makes a decision and they have to change, they can change at any time. They just need to give us about a week in case there's transportation and those kinds of mechanical, but they can make that decision. So in the new messages that we're going home to parents, we're reinforcing that, because the message walking away was, I don't think we did it well. It said something like, make your choice to January. People felt they couldn't make the change.
Right.
So we're clarifying that. But in essence, they can make the change.
And I just wanted to clarify, Rachel, it's also inclusive of preschool for those selections as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
I have a question. How are we going to advertise this to the parents, and how often will that happen so that everyone knows what's going?
Well, tonight was a board meeting. That we get stuff out.
Tonight they're gonna. I got news. They're gonna be clued into every board meeting from now on.
Well, that was one of the things that we're going to do. But Mark, I don't know if you heard, but we are announced tonight that we're going to be in the hybrid. So thank you for all of your shaking the trees and helping us getting that done, and the whole legislative group and the board members will get that out there. Much appreciated. Kathy, we have a letter that we started in anticipation of this, and that will be the first shot going home to parents along with robocalls. We're going to give people time to the end of next week to do it, and then people can update it as they go through. The reason is we've got to do the schedule, so it'll be just a series of communications that'll have to go out.
Yes.
Or and those people that don't, Gina, would you just, people that don't respond, what's the strategy with that? Can you help us out?
Well, we'll be posting on the website, and any new families that come in, we'll be sure to advise them as they come to central registration to hand in their paperwork as well. So we'll have it on not just DPS website, but on every school website, in case families are just used to going there.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Sal, based on the scenarios that you've run, are you comfortable that with the hybrid model that the capacity and staying within the acceptable social distancing, that the capacity to schools would be able to handle those number of students?
Courtney, has done a lot of extensive work with that, and Kevin, but Courtney, would you start the answer that for Rich?
Sure. Yeah, it's as safe as practicable. So, you know, there's an assumption that a certain percentage of families will choose 100% distance learning, and then the rest is going to be 50% of that. What's left over will be in school on a given day. Yeah, we've looked at it from literally every single angle we could possibly think of. Cabinet, we've been living and breathing this so much. We have an architect that Dr. Sal engaged that's worked at 3 of our schools, Statley Ruff, Rogers Park, and the high school, to set up optimal spacing now. Because they started 2 weeks ago, we had them do 3-foot, 4-foot, and 6-foot spacing in the classrooms. So they've literally looked at every classroom size we have and type of classroom that we have, and have set up this optimal distancing. So ideally, we're going to be able to fit the kids in with the 6-foot distancing in a majority of the classrooms. And that's the goal. And we also, they're working on like egress in the hallways. So where we can change to a one-way directional flow, we'll have arrows to reinforce that. There's dots on the floor, you know, that we're using to reinforce the 6-foot distancing. They've worked with the individual principals. Kevin, myself, Rich Dalbert, and Rich Torres, as well as some of the cabinet members, are going around next week to each school to, we've set up sample classrooms. We're going to go through with the principals to address all egress, arrival, departure, and flow issues. So, you know, will it be a little messy on day one? Yeah, there's going to be some bumps that we're going to have to work through. It's like all hands on deck, but we're doing as much planning as we can to make it as safe as it can possibly be for all the kids. And this is involving the principals, everyone in cabinet, and the board also, and the decisions we've made to date. So we do feel that we can live within the guidelines, and that this is a much, much safer approach for us. And I think, as Dr. Sal mentioned, with the mayor's help, legislator, your help, they heard us loud and clear at the state, and that's kind of reinforced with the governor's message as well. So I think it's as safe as we can do. And if you have any questions specifically about, you know, bathrooms or hallways or anything, you know, feel free to ask those also. But
are we anticipating using the cafeterias and gyms that overflows for classrooms?
Yeah, so we initiated at Cabinet like a planning template for each school because the situation will be a little bit unique for each school depending on the configuration of the building. We are not using the cafeteria right now for eating as we're currently planning. It's going to be a grab and go for the high school for 6 through 12. They're going to have enough time. They're getting the early release. The early release is time so that they can also do work at home. It's intricately woven. But yes, they'll grab and go the food in the elementary K through 5. They'll be eating in the school. We're still working through the logistics. The ideal is in the classroom, and we have Kathy O'Dowd here on the call too. So we're hoping that they can eat in the classroom because that will maintain the cohorting. We just have to work through the labor logistics and things like that. But to answer your question, yeah, so the cafeterias will be utilized as we're identifying swing spaces in the event that unfortunately we don't, teachers are ill and they're not able to show up. Dr. Sal's asked us to just plan for that. Hopefully it won't happen, but if it does, we do have a plan to have at least 2 or 3 classrooms socially distanced in a space, whether it's the auditorium, the gymnasium, or sometimes the media center if we need to use the media center. So for example, at Rogers Park, there are partitions. We can fit at least 2 classrooms in there and they could be mutually supervised by someone until we get a better, sub in place and plan in place for those classrooms. So
And
yes, we do have overlap. Yep.
And then Mr. Donovan, who's probably one of the largest problems in the district there, is he still working through his problems and trying to maneuver?
Hey, Donovan, Bill, is Dan, are you on? You want to talk about your problems?
I don't know if I'm a problem. I mean,
I didn't say you were a problem. I said you have one of the largest
He's
problems.
been working 24/7 on this. Go ahead, Dan.
Going to hybrid really, really helps us. Fix 1,600 kids into DHS allows us to use a lot of spaces that we weren't going to use before. We still can't use the cafeteria. We went in and measured it out, 6 feet, no masks, facing the same way. We can only fit about 120 students in there eating at a time, which would mean we would need about 12 lunch waves, so we couldn't do it. But we did look at using that as Courtney was just talking about, a large space if we do have to monitor certain classes because we don't have enough subs and things like that. So we're planning. I have a meeting with the architects tomorrow afternoon to finally go over all of our up and down stair towers. We don't have one-way hallways, but making the up and down stair towers will force traffic in a certain flow. So we're working through it. We're getting there. This helps a lot. Going to hybrid, I can actually probably sleep a little bit.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Are there any other questions?
I have
Kate may have
I have a quick follow-up. So that actually brings up the question about subs and what staff is going to wind up coming back, Kim. And I want to thank you for that comprehensive answer. That gives me a much better picture of what's going on. I'm thinking the same thing that you are, that we're going to see a lot more teachers who are just not going to be able to return for one reason or another. Do we have a plan in place for replacing that staff on a temporary basis, or how that all is going to work out?
Kim, can you?
I think it's work in progress. Honestly, it depends on the numbers. As I tried to communicate in that answer that I wrote, I'm very nervous about the numbers. I don't think we've seen even a fraction of what we're going to see. And we're now at the end of July. There was some bad information out there about kind of slowing down communication with us, and that has caused a real back and forth problem. So I know my team and I have been trying to reach out to anybody that has inquired, trying to encourage, this transfer of information so that we can start the dialogue. I think once I know that, the numbers right now are in the 30s, we can manage all kinds of accommodations of different sorts in the 30s. But when those numbers get up around 100, I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle it. We've struggled always with filling the sub pool. One thing that I am kind of good news, bad news about a lot of colleges not going back is there are provisions for us to request from the state, from the commissioner, to use those who have high school diplomas but not college degrees as temporary subs. So I'm wondering if we may be able to tap into that sort of college student model, older college students, maybe ed majors that aren't going back in person to their situations, at least first semester. So we're going to try to tap into that as a potential. I think all of our neighbors are going to be in the same situation. So we've really got to be creative about how we're going to fill some of these gaps. And I don't have a lot of answers yet if the what if does actually come to fruition.
Kim, any other information about the labor front that might be helpful?
So we have had a demand to bargain from the teachers union over whether or not our plan is going to change the terms and conditions or have an impact on their working conditions. And so we have received a demand to bargain. Attorney Mooney is going to come in as he does with the contract, the base contract, to work with us. The benefit of that is he's working with a lot of districts, so he can see kind of what's going on around the state. But I think we can anticipate that there's going to be a lot of demands. I don't know if people are aware, there's a lot of pushback from the teachers unions across the state with the governor and his plan. There's a drive-by rally scheduled for tomorrow in Hartford. So there's a lot of people talking about a lot of concerns, and I think we're going to find ourselves having at the bargaining table with the teachers union on a lot of these provisions. So
with that said, I think Gladys will have to recommend two board members, correct?
Yeah. We'll to the extent that we sort of get ready to go here, and the organization of that is going to start next week. We will need at least one or two board members to participate in that with us, because it is they are contract terms, so it really is impact bargaining.
So I'll ask the two people to submit their name to Kara, and then we'll talk later, Kim. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
And thank you for the information.
Madam Chair, I have a question about the distance learning component.
Yes, Al.
My question starts with, what platform are we going to use? Are we going to live stream to the students? I apologize for coming in late, but I had reconnection difficulties. Kara worked me through it, so I think we'll be here better late than never.
Dr. Casimiro, you want to respond, please?
Sure. So in terms of a platform, so there's a couple different things at play here, particularly at the secondary level. So as you remember last year, the district used Google Classroom as sort of it's really like an empty platform where teachers bring the content and post for children and for students and families to interact. This year, we're going to continue to use Google Classroom for those same purposes. However, we're going to be bringing in courseware, which is from a company called Edgenuity. And Edgenuity has a variety of platform options and course options. And the one that we're selecting is where teachers kind of co-facilitate courses that are sort of pre-populated using, we have an opportunity to customize those courses to align to our current curriculum that we have now. And so a lot of the content is already digitized. There are videos in there. There are questions and assessments and activities and seminars for students to engage in. And so we feel that this is going to be very helpful for the teachers and for the students to be able to have this. We want them to spend more time on the teaching part and less time trying to scramble for resources in a digitized manner, because that really takes a lot of time to curate those types of materials. So at the secondary level, we are anticipating that in the hybrid model, we'll have some students at home and some students in school. And we'll have another group that will be home for the duration, so they're not coming in at all. And that the teacher of record, so when students' schedules are made, that the teacher of record is responsible for students, whether they're in the hybrid model or in the distance learning model. And we are going to use the Edgenuity courseware to support that model, as well as live streaming in the classroom with some of the new laptops that we are anticipating purchasing and acquiring for DHS teachers. And so they'll have the ability to engage students who are at home, whether they're in the hybrid model or in distance learning. And one of the reasons that's really important for that is that we, particularly if we are going to have our folks have the ability to change their program selection, students need to be able to be incorporated into the classroom relatively quickly, be on the same pace, and still have the same curricular experiences as students who are at home.
So, doctor, this will be partially live streaming?
Yes.
Can I please answer that?
Sure.
Because what we're telling you is our utopia here is what we would like to see. I think Kim just mentioned that we've been asked to have the demand to bargain. So I would yield to Kim on this. These are things I believe have to be worked out.
Yeah.
But our intent is for the benefit of the youngsters and also for planning purposes for teachers and pacing of the curriculum to get through it. This would be the best modality for all of us concerned. But that needs to be worked out.
Right. Sal, could I just add just something to that as well? That I'd like to explain about the certification at the secondary level, which plays a role into this. And again, we're working through lots of logistics with that, but ultimately that's how we hope to proceed. But there are certainly things to work out, including the technological piece as well. So at the secondary level, at the K-5 level, things are a little bit different because certification is far more broad. So teachers have K-5 certifications and can teach a variety of grade levels and all subjects with those certifications. At the secondary level, if a student selects distance learning and they have calculus and they have AP geography, they have an English course and a chemistry course, we have to be able to service those students so that they can maintain their graduation plan and get the credits that they need. We do not have the staffing to have a complete mirror distance learning program that mimics what all of the different potential student courses in their schedules that they would have. So this is really, and it's one of the reasons why you probably see many of the surrounding districts discussing the same issues with the live streaming.
Yeah. Kara, I've got a question.
Sure.
In a K-5 level, it was unclear to me, does a teacher have, or is that teacher responsible for the lesson plans for both the hybrid, if the kid goes to school, as well as distance learning?
Right. So at the K-5 level, again, all of this really depends on the number of students who are opting in for distance learning, the number of available staff, and how well we're able to service. But at the K-5 level, we are thinking of having a teacher be exclusive for distance learning, so that they're not, because it's a little bit difficult to do that especially with the younger kids, to be managing a kindergarten, first or second grade classroom and still also be working with kids at home and making sure that they're doing that. And the kids, quite frankly, would have a hard time attending for any length. So we are looking to do more exclusive distance learning with a distance learning teacher for certain groups of kids. It could possibly mean, though, that students wouldn't be so if I'm a student and I go to Stadley Ruff and I'm selecting distance learning, I may be grouped with another group of 20 kids in second grade who also need distance learning from across the school district. So it would be a little bit different. And so one of the reasons why we're hoping that folks who make selections stick with them for a while, even though they have the option to switch, is that you can imagine the staffing logistical problems that we would have if people were switching in and out, because we're crafting staffing plans based on the models that folks are selecting. So it would make it for a very complex situation to have lots of people changing. We could certainly accommodate, folks here and there, but once it starts to reach a certain threshold, it would be a little bit more complicated to figure out. So hopefully folks will, can make a choice. And again, we're always accommodating people whose situations or needs change.
Good. Thank you, Kara.
Yes.
And so the transition back to full in school, if that happens in the middle of the year, they might be with a different teacher than they were in the first semester.
Yes, that is a good point. Correct. It's possible.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk about grading also? What are you thinking for that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So the grading, we're going to revert back to our traditional grading methods to get everybody back on track, to make sure that we're optimizing what it is that we're doing, that students are engaged. And I think we're in a much different place in the community now than we were in the spring, certainly, and hope to get back more on track. Now, certainly, if a child is struggling, a family's struggling, and it's related to what is happening now, or their connectivity issues or anything, they can certainly petition the school and their principal directly to talk about their challenges, and we can certainly offer a pass-fail with some documentation. So whereas in the spring we had a default pass-fail with an elect in for grading, numeric grading, we're going to do the opposite. So the default is our traditional grading with the option for that should there be some documented issues.
Any other questions for Kara? Thank you, Kara, for the information.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't know who can answer this, but I'm just wondering how many times can they change their mind to go back and forth?
That was going to be my question. Thank you.
Apparently, as much as they want to. I
Okay.
mean, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things the state said they could
But
do.
is-
They could be trying, but if something, we're hoping people realize the difficulty, but if they could do it as many times as they want, Catherine, as far as we understand.
And is that only in between like distance learning and in school, or does that include homeschooling also?
Well, all of it.
Okay.
The only difference there is once they say homeschool, and we want them to understand what that means, they have to unenroll.
Right.
Now, in the other two selections, for those youngsters at the secondary, have the ability to participate in interscholastic as well. So that was the other question parents had. But if yes, they can move. It's fluid through any one of the three.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
But if they withdraw and decide homeschooling, and if they're at a magnet school, they would lose their spot at that magnet school, correct?
Yeah, they would leave. That's right. That's like moving out of the district.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions from board members?
Yes.
Dr. Sale, we have out-of-district children coming into one or two of our schools, correct? And how do we control their COVID issues from their respective communities? Do we have any oversight on that?
You mean the magnet schools?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I'll let Kathy. Are you on?
Yes.
Would you want?
Sure, thank you. So for students coming from other districts, we would be looking at what the community spread is in that district. So in our immediate surrounding area in general, as of today, the community spread is very low. But I will be working with Kara Prunty at the health department. We communicate quite often, and we would be speaking about the risk in other areas. But in general, the risk in this immediate area that we have children coming into our schools, the community spread is very low.
Kara Prunty, anything to add to that?
Sorry,
Kara.
Sean?
No, just saying that we're definitely monitoring everything. So we're watching what's happening in our community. We're watching what's happening and working with other health directors in the other immediate local communities. And then we're watching everything in the entire country, because when it comes down to it, what's happening other places could potentially happen here. So we're monitoring all of that and taking all of that into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
I do, Gladys.
Yes.
Dr. Sal, normally at this time of year, if we didn't have the COVID crisis, we'd be discussing the age-old problem of enrollment. Where do we stand on the enrollment so far relative to the last couple of years? And also, can you give us an update on the high school proposal at the Matrix Center?
I'll have Mark. Why don't you start with the Matrix, and then Gina, you can talk about the registration after Mark's done. I see the mayor's still on here.
Yeah, so we continue to have discussions with the state of Connecticut. They are very promising, but nothing definitive. In September, the state will go back into session to do the school construction bill. It's our goal to try to get a reimbursement program in place for the summit, matrix, whatever you want to call it. We, again, are optimistic about that. I need to see where we're going to have some tighter numbers in the next, say, 7 to 8 days to understand a little bit more about costs. When I do that, I'll know whether or not I'll need a referendum. But if I do, then we'll do that in November. I still have a little bit of time to be able to put that in front of the council, so that would probably be in front of the council in September should we actually need to go to the voters. We may not need to, depending on where we finish with the final numbers on the design build option. But so far, we've been given the green light. It's just them understanding how to put that into legislative language, which is always a tricky part. But I do want to tip my hat to David McConney. He's been working real hard on it. I even met with the speaker about a week and a half ago. We spent a couple hours together going through everything, and he's completely on board. So I feel optimistic.
Hey, thank you very much.
It's great news. Great news. Gina, registration update?
Yep. So Kevin and I have been monitoring enrollment on a weekly basis. Kindergarten enrollment is right in line with where we were last year at this time. We currently don't see the big influx that we saw at 9th grade last year. However, once we release our plan, that could change. And we're thinking that kindergarten registrations will start upticking as normal, but especially since, we're going to say that we're going to hybrid and people were kind of just waiting for that decision. So.
All right, thank you. It's kind of hard to imagine that with the travel restrictions that we would get another bump of a 2% increase, only because of the virus and the restrictions, from other countries. So, hopefully we can maintain a lower enrollment this year.
Correct, from other countries, but it's my understanding that there are a lot of people moving into Connecticut
Out of New York State.
out of New York State. And so I anticipate maybe a bump from there. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Gina.
Are any other question? If not,
Gladys, I have a couple of questions, please.
Yes, Kate.
The first is around the plan for folks that are identified as maybe having COVID. And I know that the plan is for those kids or for those staff members to be sent home to, be tested by their doctor or have a conversation with their doctor about this. I guess I'm a little concerned because, there's also the asymptomatic piece of this that obviously we can only do our best to plan around. But it seems to me like anybody that's coming back into the building after being excused, either because they think they might have been exposed somewhere or because they're exhibiting symptoms, that they would have to have a test before they could come back into the building. I guess that there's no way for us to really mandate that, though. Is that, essentially what we're concerned about? I mean, are there community providers that we could direct them to so that that happens?
Kara Prunty, can you help us out with that?
Yeah,
Much just procedurally we have set up, but then we have to work through it. Go ahead, Kara.
there are definitely community providers that are doing testing that is easy to use, drive-through testing. There's both federally qualified health centers are doing that. One is 3 days a week, one is every day or 5 days a week, and then they're doing on-site testing. So there's definitely the availability of testing, and that's something that I talked to Kathy O'Dowd about asking people to go and get tested if they have any sort of exposure or if there's been any sort of symptoms that could possibly be COVID. That's the first recommendation, is for anyone to go get tested, whether that be students, staff, whoever. So there's definitely that availability for testing, and I foresee that continuing on through the school year. In terms of procedurally, I'm not sure about the requirements for that, but there is the availability of testing.
Kathy, do you want to respond to any of that about the procedural piece?
Sure. So the Health Services Department, we have sick day guidelines in place. We've always had them, and then they've been updated to, reflect the current situation in regard to COVID. So because the symptoms of COVID mimic many other conditions, we all know that, it's impossible for a school nurse to assess a child and say, I think you have COVID versus I think you have something else. And again, it's not our role to diagnose. So any child that presents to the school nurse with any symptoms, be it cold symptoms, stomach aches, any GI distress, that type of thing, anything that would be on the COVID list, they are going to be immediately sent home. There have been times in the past where we've been able to say, maybe you can rest a while, see if you can make it through the rest of the school day. But this is a pandemic, and we don't know, often whether it's COVID or something else. So they will be sent home, referred to their healthcare provider, and recommended to be tested. Okay, and we will ask if they are sent home ill that they at least have to come back with the doctor's note. The doctor may not recommend that they be tested, but also families don't need an order. Anyone can go to any of the places that Kara mentioned, and you can get a COVID test. But if they do get a COVID test, if it turns out that the doctor says they need it or the family chooses, we will want that test result before the child comes back to school.
Okay. And are those tests available at a reduced cost or for free?
There's no cost for the COVID testing.
Okay, great.
And that's the only thing I want to add too is, it'll be a similar situation for employees. The difference, of course, being that with the Families First Act, that if you are in quarantine because you've been sent home by us and told to quarantine, or you've traveled to another state that requires quarantine, those may all trigger the protections of that act, which include the first 2 weeks that you stay home paid. And so we're going to be, as liberal as we can with doing that, because I think when balancing the risks, we would like to implement the act and have people stay home. And what we have done over the course of the summer is we've required a doctor's note before someone has returned, or we've asked them to wait until they have the results before they come back to work. So I think the way we set the protocol up is important because it funnels these people through both Kathy and HR. HR primarily because we want to preserve every shred of confidentiality we possibly can. And so we don't want this running through building principals or anyone else. So it's going to come through my office and collaborating with Kathy on what we need for these people to be able to return to work. And I think, the only other thing I'll add is I do know, and part of what keeps me up a little bit at night is that while there is rapid testing around the city available with, they don't have appointments, so you have to kind of wait. First come, first serve. But the other testing right now, they have sort of moderate use, and their test results are 5 to 7 days running in some places. So what, as I said, keeps me up at night is we may have people in a situation where we send them home and encourage them to test, and they have to wait for those results to come back, and they're going to take a while.
Sure.
And volume starts to go up.
And they had said that those rapid result tests are not necessarily accurate, which is another issue.
So I think, if past is prologue, in another 4 weeks, we're going to know more than we know now. But for right now, we're just trying to build a flexible enough policy so that as this starts to, as we get more information, we can be a little bit nimble about how we do that.
And so what does that mean, just so I can follow up here real quick? I know Rich has another question. Just in terms of, how we're going to handle attendance policies, and that goes both for staff and for students. Obviously, we're going to have to be a lot more flexible than we have been in the past.
No question. And part of what I've trained up my team to do with regard to employees is to be well-versed on the intersection between your collective bargaining agreement and sick time, the Families First Act. In some cases, long-term disability may be triggered by this if you're unable to work in your own occupation. So we're really working hard on my team to make sure that all of the pieces of those puzzles come together and that we are acting as an information disseminator to people. I've tried really hard before COVID to pitch us as a customer service place. Never has that been more true than now. So we're encouraging everyone to have a dialogue with my team that the confidentiality is preserved, your records are preserved, and we're here to give you information on how all these fit together, because it does get complicated. And the goal is to support our employees as much as we possibly can. And that's why you'll also see the health and wellness pieces coming in, the webinars. And, one of the things we're doing on the pre-day is a Q&A with a healthcare provider so that everybody can ask their questions. So all those pieces, I think, are part of information, at least for our staff, for our employees.
Yeah. I did see your note on there about the difficulty we're going to potentially run into with folks who have family members who are immunocompromised and what that looks like. For folks who, that's going to be an inherent risk for them to be in the building.
Right. And I think it's important for all of us to remember people are nervous and, you know, understandably, everybody's a little uneasy about this. And so the more information's power, the more information we continue to get out to our employees, I think the better off we're going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Could I have ask Kathy a question, Kathy O'Dowd, a health person?
Sure.
Kathy, I just have a question. If a child becomes ill at school, and for some reason you cannot contact the parents, how is that child, what procedure are you going to use to put that child, he's going to be in the isolation room, right? So how, you're not going to be able to let him stay there for the entire day like you did before this happened. What kind of procedure are you going to have used if we can't contact the parents and get that child home or get the parents to pick up that child?
Right. So we're trying to be very proactive with parent outreach. I think, you know, in view of COVID, the district as a whole has been done more parent outreach than we've ever done before. As I said, the sick day guidelines will go out to the parents. We are also considering having the nurses and the principals do a Zoom meeting with their families to discuss the situation. I understand the challenges of working parents, we all do. However, this is a pandemic and we cannot have sick children in our buildings all day. It's just not safe. So, you know, we have to emphasize to parents that it's about their child's health and safety and that of the community as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does somebody else have a question?
I do, Gladys. Dr. Sal, is there some sort of a benchmark that's used by each individual school, or generally speaking for all the schools, as to under what conditions or how many cases you would close the school?
Kathy? Yeah, we've discussed this. Go ahead.
Yes, so the Department of Health, and Kara can certainly speak a little bit more to this, will be issuing guidelines as to what is considered low, moderate, and high risk. So anytime we have a positive case, that would be collaboration with the health department, and then collectively the decision would be made by Dr. Sal to close the school based on their recommendations.
And
Kara,
will it be,
anything you want to
and
add
will
to
it
that?
be school by school?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I guess what I'm asking is the threshold that you're going to close a school, it will be school by school. In other words, if Stadley Ruff is a hot spot, we'll just close Stadley Ruff, we won't close the whole district.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And at what threshold will we close the whole district like we did in the spring? You know, that's the question too.
Right. Again, that would be done in collaboration with the health department based on what community transmission is. If things are low as they are today, we wouldn't have to resort to that. But if, you know, and I'll tell you, I have concerns about travel over the summer and people going to hotspots, coming from hotspots. So we'll be looking very carefully at those numbers to see if anything changes over the.
I just have one more thing to add to that too, Kathy, just to piggyback on what you're saying is we have also been in contact with quite a few employees who have asked us, what do they do? They're taking their child, they're supposed to take their child to college in a hotspot right before school starts. So that's another list that we're maintaining in HR. Jen Gonzalez is working with those people to explain to them about the rules about coming back, the 14-day quarantine or a negative test result within 72 hours. So we got a lot of lists going, and that's another list we've got going. And right now, I'm comfortable that most of those people will clear the quarantine period before children actually start coming back in on the 1st. So pushing back our start date helped a little bit too.
Thank you, Kim.
The only thing that I would like to mention is that the state is developing metrics that will be determined.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, my microphone's terrible. The state is developing metrics that will be low, moderate, and high, but when working with Kathy, we're also going to be working to assess each individual positive as it happens and determining what level of closure we'd have to do, whether it be classroom, school, or multiple schools. So there's different scenarios that could happen that would ensure closures and different things. So it's really going to be somewhat individualized that we're going to have to make those determinations.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I've got one more, please.
Yes, go ahead, Kate.
I just want to ask about procedurally, we talked about kids being isolated in a COVID-specific room. It's got to have a window and a door to make sure that, that we're allowing enough space for those kids. If we have multiple kids at the same time, are they all going to be in that same isolation room?
So even within the isolation rooms, we still have to maintain a safe distancing. And it's a very challenging question. I've been in contact with other districts to look at what they're doing. And in some of the surrounding districts, children may, depending on the weather, they may actually wait outside with somebody monitoring them. Actually, outside is a better place to wait. Hopefully, with all the outreach we're doing to parents, less sick children coming to school, I'm also hoping that because of all the mitigation strategies, everyone being very vigilant with their hand washing, wearing the masks, we may see hopefully a decline in some of those common illnesses that we usually see in the beginning of the school year. That is a possibility, but we will have to still maintain safe distancing. So it is a work in progress. I'm working with school nurses and the principals on that. And our isolation space is challenging to identify spots in the school.
And then is there, I don't know if this is something that's on the radar or being discussed, the possibility of, picking up some additional nurses or nursing staff, somebody who can fill in at least maybe intermittently, depending on what's happening in the schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're having those conversations. Our substitutes may not be in the fall, but we're working on some other situations, and I'm in communication with Kim on that as well, and Kelly.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, Dr. Sayre?
Oh, but I just am so lucky to have a team that I have that have been working so diligently. And I thank the mayor and the city folks for all they've done. All I can tell you is that our whole focus has been around safety, as I said the first night when we started this, and that's where we ended up. The yeoman work that has been done is just incomprehensible, and we still have a lot more to do. So I can only say thank you. There'll be a lot of things we got to work out procedurally when they present us, but I'm confident that we're nimble enough and with the right focus of making sure our kids are safe and teachers, that we'll do the right thing. Going slow is a good thing at this point, and giving us the ability to split puts us in a good position to plan. So as Dan said, it's made a difference. He can get a little sleep at night. Now all of us can with this hybrid model. We feel that it'll be much safer. So I thank the board for being patient for the week. I know it ended kind of quickly last week, but I think it was valuable to have this evening so that we could clarify questions. So I want to thank everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Sayre. Is the mayor still on? Do he have?
He's still on.
Hey, he's okay. Just for the board, something to think about as we get ready to enter this phase of the school reopening. And I think it's very important that we keep the communication going. I don't know how you feel about maybe within a week or two, if we have additional information, have another meeting, and probably there will be some additional information. It's just something to think about and to keep the community informed. And as we have conversation with people, what comes out of your mouth sometimes can be very negative to other people. And to not have conversation with people to say, well, they didn't get the right answer that you anticipated, to say they don't know what they're doing. And I just encourage us to think about things before we open up our mouth and say it. We know that Dr. Sam and his staff is really working hard. We know that. We thank everybody for the support for the hybrid models, those that sent communication to our governor and our delegation that took part in listening in and supporting us. And on behalf of the board, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for your support. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a move.
Motion by Mr. Gianelli.
Second.
Seconded by Amy.